Life gives us moments when we have the opportunity to make a choice. And what we choose has the potential to change our lives forever. Join us now for another inspired episode of The Breakthrough. And now, please welcome the creator and host of the show, Jessica Dugas.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Breakthrough Show. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and I am so thankful that you've chosen to spend some time with us today. As usual, we've got an incredible hour coming up for you today. Coming up later in the show, you're going to meet my friend Vikram Rajan, who's the owner of videosocials.net. He's co-owner, and we're going to hear a lot about his entrepreneurial journey and his breakthroughs, of course. But up first, finishing and ending the show today, we're being joined by an employment law attorney who has a passion for helping clients understand the value of a more harmonious workplace. We need more of those in the world today. I invited her here because I am in awe of her experience. I love the way she talks about and her thoughts and suggestions around harassment, discrimination, and bullying. And that's something that I really feel like the world needs to hear more about today. I can't wait to share her with you. Please welcome my new friend, Sejal Thakkar, to the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I'm so excited to be here.
I am thrilled to finally get to sit down and have you on the show because we talked before. We hit it off right away. We have a lot that we have in common, and we got a good chance to talk. But every time I read your posts on social media and see videos of you talking, I've seen you on our friend Oleg's show before and talking about different things with them, I always walk away with a different perspective of things. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing in the world because these topics are something that are needed and are front of mind for many of us right now.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I feel like there's certain issues that you can say over and over again, and it's never going to get old. It's always going to be something we need. And so I love what I do, and being able to kind of just combine my passion with helping people. It's just like I feel like I'm just so lucky to be able to have the job that I do right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're an attorney, and did you always want to be an attorney? Was this something that you grew up and you're like, that's, you watch maybe movies with an attorney, you're like, that's what I want to be. Did you always know?
I always knew, I think my dad was, when I was like 8 or 9, I used to ask why a lot just growing up. I always need to know, why are we doing that? Or why are you telling me to do that? So I always asked a lot of questions. And one day at dinner, my dad had said to my mom that she's going to be a lawyer. And it was pretty obvious that was going to be my role. My dad started law school in India before he moved here. And so that was another thing that I wanted to really kind of follow through with what he started. But honestly, when I grew up, I dealt with some bullying and discrimination, and I would always ask, like, why are they making fun of my parents' accent? Why are they making fun of the color of my skin? I was bullied in high school. And so I always had a passion for social justice. And when I went to law school, I didn't really know that I'd be in the employment law area. I wasn't really sure kind of what I wanted to do when I came out. I knew it was going to be an area of social justice. But when I started working in the employment law area after I passed the bar in California in 2003, I knew that was the perfect place for me, because I wish I can help people on a bigger level with regards to these justice issues. But at least in the workplace, I can make a dent. And so that's why I do what I can, because it's a contained environment and there's so much that we can do there that I've dedicated my life to kind of just helping employees. The other piece of it too is, like, we spend so much time at work, and it's an area where I feel like we could do better. There's so much that we could do to make people more comfortable and not deal with the kinds of stuff that they're dealing with. So that's when I started my company in November of 2017. That was my sort of business plan, is how can I help reduce harassment and discrimination and bullying behavior at workplaces, and also create environments of inclusive, so where people feel like they're included and they're valued, right? Because that's what we all want.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine, like, I can imagine your process of going through school, like especially having such a passion for social justice and going, this is maybe even saying to yourself, like, this is just the employment space. Like, what can I actually do here? Right. And so, but like you said, we're there a lot of the time. And also like thinking about it, sometimes like it could go either way. Sometimes somebody's a completely different person in the workspace than they are at home. And sometimes they're the exact same person at home that they are in the workspace. And neither one of those, I think, could be a really good thing depending on the person, right?
It's true. And we all have different personalities. You know, a lot of the work that I'm doing right now, Jessica, is dealing with the fact that we have so many different layers of diversity to us individually, right? I mean, the way that I view the world and the lens that I look at the world is because of the way that I was raised, because of the religion, my parents' upbringing, media, where I grew up. That's going to make a lens of how I'm going to look at the world. It's going to be very different from how you view the world, right? And when you bring that into the workplace, I think a lot of times organizations aren't training their employees on how to navigate through those differences that we all have. And so when we have those differences, we make these assumptions about people. And a lot of times these assumptions, which happen without us even knowing it, they're going to impact the way that we interact with each other. And so I always tell people, like, diversity is a beautiful thing. I mean, the business case for why we want diversity, and it's not an option. I mean, we're in California, I mean, it's diversity. You walk into any employer, you're going to have diversity and globalization. So much for not being able to work from home. We've got over 50% of the workforce working from home. So I could be standing in my house right now talking to somebody in a different country. You have to know how to navigate with these differences. And so that's another area where I think there's a lot of work that we need to do, is how do we navigate through those differences so that we can interact more effectively with each other.
Right. Yeah, I think it's, you know, I imagine that this conversation has gone to a whole new level in 2020 because of everything that's happening around the world with issues with race, and that really being front of mind and in the news. And I know that it has been a very interesting environment, in an already very interesting environment in the Deep South here in the United States. And so I'm curious if you've seen more of this conversation about race coming up in the workplace as well.
Absolutely. You know, I've been working in this field for a long time, and I have never seen it at the levels that we're seeing it right now. I mean, I did a podcast on I think it was at the beginning of when COVID started, and that's where we started seeing a lot of an increase in what Asian people were dealing with the coronavirus. Remember when all that was going on?
Yes.
And I literally, back then on that podcast, I almost predicted that this was going to give rise to this, because I'm like, fear, uncertainty, a pandemic, people working from home, you know, just all of this insecurity that everybody was feeling, not to mention what the Black lives have been put through for like over 400 years. Right. It was a perfect storm for all of this to happen, that I predicted that I remember even telling my friend on there, I'm like, I would not be surprised if this happens. And there's definitely been an increase. And the scary part about it is that our political climate too is adding a lot of stress to the situation, if not inciting it even more. And so, you know, if organizations aren't prepared, or they're not handling these issues in a timely manner and the right way, people are just going to walk out the door. People are done putting up with it. They're like, you know, I want to be treated with dignity and respect. And if you're not going to give me that, I'm going to take everything that you've taught me, everything that you've trained me, and I'm going to take it to the competitor right across the street, because I'm not putting up with this anymore. And that's what's going on.
I feel like this, you know, working online in a place and living in the area that I do in the South, where people do tend to keep to their own communities and groups of people that are like them, and not everybody and not everywhere. So I don't want anybody watching to go, well, that's not where it's just been my experience here that it's different that way. And so working online has been a beautiful way for me to keep that, you know, connecting with everybody going, you know, and not feeling pressured to hang out with people just because they're like me, you know?
Exactly. And what you're describing is classic affinity bias, right? We are hardwired. That's part of our hardwiring. We feel more comfortable with people that look like us, that talk like us, that remind us. There's a sense of safety and comfort there. But that's part of our hardwiring. So, I mean, you're thinking like, okay, that's how it is. But yeah, but when you're, let's say, for example, if you're a manager at work and you're like looking to who you're going to promote, it's not fair if you're just going to promote people that look like you because of your bias. I mean, there might be another person that is of a different race, of a different religion, that has the skills, but you're not going to give them an opportunity because of your bias. And that's why this work is so important. It's because there's nothing wrong with that. We all have it. Like you said, we all have bias. I mean, there's over 200 different kinds of unconscious bias. So we all have it. I mean, I remember this, I say this every single podcast I do because I think it's hilarious. But like this guy, one of the trainings I did, he raised his hand and he's like, I don't have any bias. And I go, okay, if you have a brain, then you've got bias, right? Like we all have it. It's normal. There's nothing wrong with it. It becomes a problem when we're not aware of it. And now it's going to give unearned advantages or disadvantages to people that don't deserve it. And it's okay. Like, look, we spend a majority of our life, you know, on autopilot. Like when you're doing things like tying your shoelaces or combing your hair, you don't really want to think about everything you're doing. So that's our brain automatically, 90% of what we do is on autopilot mode. And so it's okay. But if you think about it, a lot of that is coming from your bias. And so because you're making these spontaneous judgments, the error rate is really high. Right. So, I mean, you talk about right now, what is the one thing we're seeing a lot of? I just saw something on LinkedIn where somebody said, why is it that when you're walking down the street and you see a black male walking by, you're clutching your purse a little bit harder? Why is that? Well, that's bias because of not just maybe what you're ingrained with, but the media, the way it's portraying Black people, everything is going to shape how you respond. But that person may not be deserving of that sort of responsibility. And I think the problem becomes is when you're not aware of your unconscious bias. And here's the thing with unconscious bias, right? They're unconscious to us, but it comes out in our actions and behaviors to people around us. So just ask somebody, ask somebody that'll be brutally honest with you, you know, and say, you know, have you ever seen me say something or do something that might be evidence of some kind of bias? I mean, just be ready for the answer you're going to get because it comes out. It's just, we don't know about it.
Right. I mean, I think that's part of the question that people aren't going to want to ask because they're not going to like what they're going to hear. They immediately go to, and I know that this has been the case for me too in the past, where I've immediately gone to, well, that must mean I'm a bad person,
right?
Because I've got these things going on.
I'm of the belief that you want to have diversity of thought, regardless of what the purpose is or what your mission is, because you want to hear the different perspectives. You may not like all of them, and that's okay. You don't have to, and that's the thing. It's not that we all have to think the same way. It's how do we all get along with knowing that we are going to have differences of opinion. We are going to view the world differently, and so there are going to be some challenges present. But then it requires a commitment to each other to say, okay, you know what, Sejal, I want you on my show. I don't necessarily agree with your approach, but I want my listeners to have to hear that, because then they can hear different perspectives and now they can make a decision that's going to fit whatever they're looking to accomplish or gain from it. I think the problem becomes when you say, I only want this type of, you really are not doing yourself a service, because how can you serve the listeners of your show if they're going to come from all demographics, if you don't give them perspectives from all demographics, right? So when I look at organizations, it always baffles me because I'm like, wait, you've got, your board of directors is all Caucasian, and yet your customer base is Black, brown, whatever. How can you serve those customers unless you've got people in the room that are making decisions that can say they could relate and they've lived those life experiences, right? In the medical field, we see that all the time. There's so much research about how certain, whether it's Black or brown people or whoever, are not getting the same kind of medical treatment because a lot of these protocols, a lot of this stuff was developed with a certain audience in mind. And so this is when we talk about like system, going back and looking at the system. When you go back and people who are going to receive the benefits of that system were not considered, that's not going to work. That's going to create issues, right? And so when you bring that within the organization, and now you wonder, why do we have all these lawsuits? Why do we have all these complaints? Why is there all this conflict happening? Is because we all need to figure out, and I think it's really just, a lot of people say, I'm going to tolerate differences. And we are no longer just at a place where we can afford to be tolerating of each other. We have to get to the point where we understand each other. And that requires some work,
Right.
both on an individual level as well as an organizational level. Right. So what you said, and I appreciate you sharing that, is for you to, to really figure out why you're having certain people on your show. You really have to go back and take a look at every aspect of why you're doing this show. What is your mission? What is your purpose? What are you trying to accomplish? And then look at each of those areas to see, am I intentionally making an effort to diversify?
Right.
But
And I
it's
think
totally normal.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, I don't ever want to. I felt like it was very unnatural for me to try to stage the show in any kind of way, whether it's specifically targeting a certain, person to interview just because I need the rainbow on the show or whatever, or to, but I did look at, where am I marketing? Where, what types of groups am I in? What types of people am I connecting with? And for me, as long as that door is open and I continue to follow my intuition of how I set up the show, which is simply just to match amazing people like I did with you and Vic on the show today, like matching them together, the conclusions that people draw from that, I'm kind of like at a place where it's like, that's not my responsibility, because I've done what I feel good in my heart of doing, which was to open the door.
And that's, I think the only thing I would add to that is what I tell people is like, there's a difference between, if you're in a position where you can make room for people that are marginalized to have a voice or a space and create that space for people. If you have that availability, I always encourage people to do that, because, like right now I do that all the time. It's like, if someone asks me, is there somebody you want to recommend to be on this panel? I'm going to see if I can put somebody that might be marginalized. For example, I have this one colleague and friend who's also a public speaker that does a lot of trans rights work. And I try to really get her every opportunity I can, because that voice isn't really heard out there, and we need to hear that voice. And so I intentionally will sometimes, if I can, make room for those voices that don't have that space. Right. And so, just if you have that ability, I always tell people, let's amplify voices, let's get their voices heard. Not just because you have to meet a number requirement or anything like that, but because they really add value, and we want to be able to help get that voice heard. Right.
Absolutely. And that's ultimately what I want with the programs that I put out there, is to have those different voices, because the truth of the matter is that there are a lot of shows who would say no. There are plenty of that would say, we don't do that here, and that's just not the kind of welcoming environment that I have said that I wanted to put out there. So much of this is so good. I want to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk to Vic, and then we're going to come back with more with Sejal at the end. All right.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we're going to be back in just a minute with Vikram Rajan. We hope you've been enjoying the Breakthrough Show. If you're someone who is an inspirational entertainer or has an incredible story of breakthrough, we want to hear from you and maybe even have you on the show. Be sure to visit the links in our show notes to send us an email or connect with us on social media. We hope to see you on a future episode of the show. And now back to the Breakthrough. Welcome back to the Breakthrough Show. My special guest today is an entrepreneur bringing video marketing to professionals around the globe through phoneblogger.net, videosocial.net, and we'll get to talk to him a little bit more about that. Please welcome my special guest today, Vikram Rajan. Vikram, welcome.
Thanks, Jessica.
It's
Looking
so
forward
good
to talking to you.
yes, it's so good to have you on. So many people, I always end up saying this in the beginning, but we'll talk and have our connection about being on the show, and then it's like maybe a month or so until we get to talk again. So I'm like counting down. When am I gonna, when are we gonna have this conversation? So I'm glad you're here today.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Awesome. So share something with us today to start us off that's bringing you joy in your life right now.
I would say always my children, as aggravating as they can be, as I'm sure you know. Right now, I know this is coming out post-coronavirus, but I have the pleasure of having my son having to sleep next to me in a bed at my in-laws because of we're isolating my wife, who's an ER physician, who's on the front lines of this thing. So every day I get to wake up to his face. And it's not as fun going to sleep and trying to get him to sleep, but it is very enjoyable to wake up and see his little face and kind of just snuggle with him and have him push me away because he's 4 years old, a cantankerous little boy. But it's very joyful to see him. And of course, my daughter, she comes running into the room a little bit later. So I would say that.
Yeah, I think that, it's even when we're going through a lot in the world, it's, I think, always refreshing to have a child's perspective, to see the way that they react. And it kind of reminds us to chill out a little bit.
It's like, my daughter, she's 2, and she very much kind of follows the, kind of the sage wisdom of living in the moment and living in the present. And so if you're out of sight, you're out of mind, which can be a little, troublesome. But, when she's with you, she is with you. There's really not much else that she's thinking about. So, and that's wonderful and joyful to see and experience. So it's kind of one of those live in the moment type lessons of life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been a lot of fun having mine to see their reaction to everything going on in the world. And we've been homeschooling a while, so I'm used to having them home all the time with me. But it's been amusing for us, though, because so many of my friends have said to me in the past, like, I could never imagine homeschooling, and they're all having to do it now. So.
Yeah, luckily, I have my in-laws that are able to take care of them during the day during this calamity. But then, typically they're in daycare and preschool. So I think they're better off for it. I don't know if they need me as a teacher. Kudos to you, Jessica, for doing it. I don't know if I could handle it, but yeah, congrats.
It's a lot. Honestly, it's just some days you just have to scratch it and be like, we're just going to pretend like that day didn't happen, So I would love to hear a little bit about how you got started doing what you do and helping professionals start doing video marketing, because that's something, like, we see how important video marketing is right now to the world. And but I suppose, tell me about what kind of professionals you work with as well, because some people I don't think can see how video marketing would fit with their line of work.
So all of our clients and members get their business through word of mouth referrals. So that's kind of the first and foremost. That's like the litmus test of, if your profession, if your business, your practice gets business through referrals, then our kind of video marketing is going to work, because it's just an extension of who you are, an extension of the connections that you have. The fact that it happens to be through YouTube or through Facebook or through LinkedIn or email is really kind of secondary. It's still, there's another person at the end of that other computer, and it's at least a proxy, it's a representation of who you are. And so it's just an easy way for people to share you with others. So our members are specifically attorneys and accountants, coaches, consultants. So they are subject matter experts. Some of them call themselves thought leaders. A lot of them don't consider themselves, but they are thought leaders. So it's folks who make a living with their expertise. And they may have a product, a physical product, but most of them have some type of a service, and maybe they package it in a course or some other type of packaged way of their expertise and competency. But ultimately, it's kind of their brainchild that really is of service to the world. And thus, our type of video marketing focuses on the video blogging part on social media. So it's very representative of who they are. and what they do. So it's their personality as well as their expertise. So in combination, it becomes their personal brand. So if all that stuff would help someone, then yeah, I welcome them to kind of figure out how they could benefit from our community.
Right. Do you think that, because I know for me on the purchasing end of things, as a buyer, I want to buy from people that I know a little bit about them. I feel like we're connected in this. That's why I love this video format so much. And do you think that when you start working with someone, is there sort of a learning curve where they have to understand that? Is it hard for them to put themselves out there in that way?
So I think all of them recognize that their reputation and their personal brand definitely speaks volumes, and that referral, whomever is recommending them, obviously is tremendously important to kind of activate that and nurture those relationships. What is challenging sometimes is that a lot of people get very nervous about being video recorded and are scared. I mean, now, again, we're kind of, when this comes out, kind of hopefully post-coronavirus, and we've had obviously this flood of people on Zoom and other types of video conferencing. So there's definitely people kind of getting used to the technology logistics, as well as the awkwardness of where do I look and how do I look and what's in back of me and all those kind of logistics. I think for the most part, people are getting over, which I'm thankful for. But there's still that added awkwardness and kind of butterflies in the stomach whenever we're recorded. It's kind of the awkwardness of grabbing a mic and speaking on stage, yet we can very easily say the same thing one-on-one to people. It's just kind of a mind game that we kind of get into. So really the only way to get over it is to practice.
Right.
Because practice being recorded and knowing that the first couple of times isn't going to be that good. It probably may not be that bad, but it may not be that good. And they will, of course, get better, and they'll get to a point that is their greatness, which can sound a little hokey, but I'm not looking for them to be anyone that they're not. Like, they don't need to be this pizzazz Tony Robbins on stage type person. That's not their personality. And kind of like what you were saying, Jessica, that, if we're looking at it from the consumer standpoint, if I'm looking to relate to someone, let's say if I'm looking to hire an accountant, a CPA, well, I don't need her to be like full of pizzazz and energy and, flair. I just need to know that she knows what she's talking about and that I trust her and that she has the demeanor and the personality that I can relate to. And maybe that is someone who's like really numbers oriented, and maybe I don't really totally relate to that. I'm not that kind of guy, but I'm happy she is. Because that's exactly the kind of person I want. I don't need someone just like me, or maybe I do, and maybe I do want someone who's a little creative and is going to kind of try to, find the loopholes that I'm looking for. So it depends on the kind of person you're looking for, and exactly what you said, Jessica. Your personality is able to come through so much better after a little bit of practice, where you don't need some persona. You're able to have a conversation with someone, and kind of our model kind of brings that out so much more naturally. So in that sense, yeah, I think video is an excellent proxy to kind of help people get to know you. And, in marketing, there's this kind of cliche of know, like, and trust.
Right.
And kind of the phases of how you get to someone to refer you. And trust comes through familiarity. Familiarity breeds trust. And so that repetition essentially is kind of the secret to everything. From branding is repetition, essentially, and likewise with video marketing.
Right. I'm so glad that you said that there are different types of personas that people need to figure out sort of who they are on video, and different types of personalities are needed for different things. And that was our experience with this show as well. When we was so funny, at the very beginning, a couple years ago, we would have these conversations before the show that would be fantastic, and we would be going off of each other, and it would be great. And then as soon as we would hit that live button, it was like they were a completely different person.
Yeah.
And so as time would go on, I had to talk to people on the show about, okay, first, we're just going to have a conversand. That's all we're going to do. I'm not going to, this isn't like just pretend like nobody's watching, if that helps a little bit. But also it's a completely different vibe you need to have for something that's an entertainment type of show than, say, a lawyer coming on and giving his expertise about whatever kind of case, right?
Right. Yeah. Look, I mean, for us, the first time someone comes onto video socials, I say keep it simple. Just introduce what you do and who you do it for, kind of like an elevator pitch, or really how you would introduce yourself to anyone at a party, at a barbecue. And just kind of keep it simple, just to kind of get over the willies and the awkwardness of being recorded, and then we can work on the substantive topics, the sound bites and nuggets of knowledge that really get shared. Because if it's just you introducing yourself, why is someone going to share that? Because it's more than just posting the video on social media. We want to really entice people to share you with others. I mean, that's the referral. So unless you're giving some type of a tidbit of an aha, it doesn't need to be that profound, but it can be like, hey, maybe you never thought about this, or maybe you did, and here's a reminder. And those kind of nuggets are really what gets shared. And they're not, like we said, Jessica, it's not like a lot of pizzazz to it. But it is nuggets of knowledge, and yes, they are substantive, and that takes a little bit of practice for a lot of our members, where they have to do it within 3 minutes, preferably in 2 minutes, and that can be tough. But it's a fun muscle to build, because if none of us want to overtalk, and none of us like when other people overtalk. So it helps to be able to kind of have these sound bites in your mind, so that you kind of give 2 minutes and shut up.
Right. I want to, in the spirit of the know, like, and trust, I want to backtrack for a minute. Why are you so passionate about this line of work? Is this something that you've always done or wanted to do? Why are you doing it now?
So it's funny. I started a creative writing magazine in school, in college, university, and published others, and did a lot of presentations back then in terms of spoken word poetry and stuff like that. Very comfortable on stage, did a lot of political rallies, so comfortable on the mic. And then as I became a marketing consultant, and I got busy, and my partner Mark got busy, we wanted to do something that our clients needed, but was a little bit more scalable than just trading our hours for dollars. And so we created the service called Phone Blogger, as you mentioned in the bio. And Phone Blogger, we interview our clients over the phone and turn what they say into optimized written articles. And we have staff around the country, clients around the country. And then we got to a certain point where we started realizing that the world of social media was changing, and was prioritizing video over written articles. And that was hurting our clients, and it was hurting us. And so we needed to figure out a way to force our clients into this world of video in a comfortable, hopefully fun way. And so Video Socials was born. And so for me, it's not any one business that kind of gets me excited. It's really seeing how our clients, and we call them members now, how they can be positively benefited, which may sound corny, but I want them to actually achieve something. I want them, and that for them to get through some type of breakthrough, because as they start seeing the results, which, it could be as great as a client, it could be a referral that may or may not close as a client. It could be like the like, comment, shares that they get through social, but it could also be this personal development, that they are now doing something that they know they ought to be doing, that they should be doing, that they wanted but maybe didn't want really. And that could be publishing a written blog, and now it's publishing and posting video blogs, and they're coming out of their shell, and they're being seen as an author, they're being seen as a subject matter expert. And that I like. I mean, I enjoy seeing other people feeling fulfilled and getting that value out of something that I kind of created and concocted along with Mark. But it was just we made up the phrase video blogging club. I mean, that's not something that's really there. And it's like, all right, let's create something. And yeah, we borrow from a lot of different systems like networking groups and mastermind focus groups and presentation coaches. And, we kind of put them all into a stew. But that's really what, as opposed to literally the business, is the passion of, can I create another vehicle, another way to help our members, our clients, really get the word of mouth referrals and the personal branding that they should be getting, that it shouldn't be a best kept secret. Right. And so that's kind of fun.
I love that what fires you up are those results from your clients, are in seeing people succeed and seeing other people break through, because we have people on this show that are very obviously in the personal or spiritual development realm, that's clearly what they're what drives them, as well as seeing people's transformations and all of that. But it's really cool to hear someone, I guess, in sort of mainstream business sense, say that's the same thing that lights you up as well, because we don't hear that all the time.
Yeah. I mean, we recognize that we are ultimately a personal development community, even though we don't really market it that way because no one's really buying that. Um, we have a saying internally that they come to record, but they stay for the rapport. It's a nice play on words, but it's really the rapport of our community members, of how they're getting to know one another and helping one another, literally on the video socials meetings, but also afterwards sharing each other's videos. And then even more profoundly, not only having kind of joint ventures and collaborations, referring each other business, but it could be even personal relationships. It's these business relationships turn into friendships. And, something I'm starting to say to our members that, other people, their members are going to start liking their videos and sharing their videos when they start liking each other.
Right.
And it's really just a parallel that they're not sharing each other's videos just out of obligation, because there is no obligation and there's no measurement. But they want to do it. And the more we can foster that community of everyone kind of helping each other, the better off everyone will be. And I'm able to kind of see that flourish. And I find it kind of cool.
I love that too. And that's really great advice is, the fostering of relationships and doing it because you actually like someone and you actually are creating that relationship, because so many people in the social media space are just obsessed with the numbers. And it's like, okay, let's pay for likes, like my page, like my post, but it's like, where I've been sitting back going, I may have grown a little slower compared to other people, but I sit back and I say, you know what? If you don't like what I'm doing, please don't like it, because that doesn't help me to know who actually appreciates the content, right?
Yeah, it's for a lot of our members and our clients, it doesn't take a lot to really move the needle in terms of actual results. For example, all of us get some type of referrals, recommendation from some friends, colleagues, business relationships. Maybe we did it strategically, maybe it happens by chance. But for us to kind of create that list, and we literally do this with our members, of kind of a brainstorming tool that we have. We used to call it referral circle. Now it's kind of guest brainstorming. And just kind of really uncover who refers them business and who they refer business to. The circular effect, from and to. And to say, all right, how many referrals did you get from them? And maybe it was only 1 or 2 last year. Well, what can we do now to make that 2 or 3? And if we go from 1 to 2, that's literally double. And it's wonderful hyperbole to say you could double your referrals. And yet to say you went from like 5 to 10 isn't this fantastic number to really brag about.
Right.
But that's really sustainable, because now you can actually double again. You can keep doubling. And it is profound to kind of really take a step back and think about kind of hands-on. It doesn't take a lot to really make a big difference for each of our practices, each of our businesses, and that it doesn't need to be just this vanity metrics of how many likes we got, how many, open rate or anything. That it's nice, but really those things don't matter when the phone's not ringing or when people are not emailing us that they need help for whatever goal that we can help them achieve. And so I tend to focus there where it's not sexy numbers, so to speak, but it actually does bring in business and bring in value. And in that sense, we have loyal clients and members and raving fans who then kind of brag about video socials to other people. So then they bring guests, and then the cycle continues. And I think anyone can create some type of model in their business, no matter how awkward or taboo their subject matter area is, be it, bankruptcy or family divorce or, things that, not everyone's bragging about that they're going through, but there can be some aspect that they can create so that they create some type of a flywheel of raving fans and a community.
Right. Do you feel like there's a misconception or a misrepresentation of how quickly people think that things can grow online? I mean, I know you were talking about, just doubling the number. So 5 to 10, 10 to 20 kind of thing. But I think a lot of people have this expectation based on what they see on social media that it's going to go from 5 to 500 and 500 to 5 million. And that viral is a normal thing that happens, other than the viral that we've been dealing with as a globe.
I'm looking forward to
viral
marketing
online.
Or going viral being a figurative metaphor again. It's like now everyone knows what happens when you double a penny in 30 days. So yes, I think so. I mean, I sometimes have to caution our members and say, look, you're not a cat on a Roomba. You're not a puppy outgrowing its doggy bed. And so, as cute as you may be, you're probably not cuter than those, chubby or extra chubby babies. And so you're probably not going to go that viral, especially compared to that. And really, do you need to? I know you're in Alabama, I'm in New York, and, it's an attorney in Alabama doesn't really need to go viral in the middle of New York City. Like, how is that helpful to him? I mean, some cases, there are exceptions to that, right? But for the most part, he or she is getting their business from some 20-mile, 30-mile radius or some whatever that radius really is. But that's most likely. And now there are some businesses that are online and can have kind of a national or international scope, and that's true. And as much as they can scale and go global, they can do it methodically, and they can do it really with this notion of 10 to 100 raving fans and really starting to expand from there and focus in on providing those values, because that's really the breakthrough that happened for us, was kind of seeing that it's always that 80-20 rule, that for some proportion like that, where there's going to be a 20% or some small number that are truly A+ raving fans, and some they'll do on their own in terms of referring you. But even with those 20%, we need to give some type of a catalyst for our community. We need to give them some content, some collateral, something for them to share, a crutch for them to share, so that they have something to share. Or else, as much as they're an awesome raving fan of ours, they have a busy schedule, they have their own to-do list, they have their own business or their own career, and how can we then help them? So, I don't know if that answered that question, but for each of our clients, it's important to say that, look, you're not gonna go viral immediately, and you don't have to, and you may never, and that's okay, because it doesn't take a lot to make a big difference. That if literally your 5 clients turn into 10 clients, that could be enough this year, or if it's this week or this month, whatever that number is, it doesn't take a whole lot to double. And there are a lot of things that you can do right with the people that you know and go deeper with, and they already know, like, and trust you already. So it's going to go faster in terms of the results, that each person knows another 100 people at least. And so how do we activate that? That takes, unfortunately, a lot of caring and a lot of nurturing and a lot of empathy of what they're going through, so that you're adding value to them. And I'm not perfect in that. We've got tons of members that I haven't done that full outreach to. It's like on my to-do list, I know. But it's amazing when you start doing that referral circle exercise, how far you can go just with the people you know. And then you can go viral. And unfortunately, those outlier cases, those urban legend type stories of that person who went viral overnight or made a 6-figure in 6 months, it's, first of all, hopefully they're telling the truth. We don't know if they are.
Right.
Number 2, they're like the 1 in multiple million. And good for them. Like, we shouldn't hate on them. That's great. And there's definite lessons to be learned from them. But it doesn't need to be all or nothing. There's a lot of that gray area, and most of us are here, and that's okay. Especially with our goal. Now, it may not be enough. Like, I want to be global, and I think that in a couple of years, we are going to be the next big business community, but it has to start somewhere, and it really has to start with our raving fans, because no matter what our ad budget is, it's going to be the raving fans that really compel others way more than any advertising that we can ever do.
Right.
So I say that for all of our members.
I would love for you to give our audience some advice if they know that they need to do the video marketing thing, and they're just like, listen, I don't know if I can put myself out there like that.
Sure.
If you have any thoughts for people, I'm assuming that consistency is something that's really important in all of this as well.
Yeah, consistency, you want to have an appointment with yourself at the very least, hopefully an appointment with others, because it's even more accountable that way. It's in your calendar. We are more apt to do things that are already scheduled in our calendar, and preferably it's in our calendar with other people. It goes back to the accountability. It's very easy to push off things that you're just doing on your own, but then when you're involving other people, you owe it to them, they owe it to you, and so you tend to do things more often. And it's very similar to kind of joining a spin class or a Zumba class, or we're like the Peloton of video blogging, because it's ultimately a solo sport, but done virtually together. So from that aspect, I would, of course, welcome any of your viewers and listeners to come give it a try. The beauty of our platform is that you don't have to actually publish the video in the beginning, and most of our members don't publish their first one or two videos. So you're in good company of other people who are equally nervous about this, and you may be a great presenter. Most of our members, I would say, are extremely well-spoken. They're all well-seasoned, well-connected. So I think millennials can find a home in video socials, but most of our members have more gray hair than I do. So they are older, seasoned professionals. I don't know if it comes through on video. Every day I ask my daughter what color my hair is. She says black. But I don't think this is just an older person's game. I think even younger people, the issue of being nervous on video and not having the time for it, or thinking that we don't have the time for it, or it being lonely. I mean, just turning on the camera and talking to this black hole, pretending that someone's there, is kind of boring and lonely, and which is kind of why we don't keep up the habit. And so we keep it fun so that you get to see other people and have a focus group, and they get to be, a mastermind helping you improve your messaging. And you get to also help them as well, which also helps your messaging as you give feedback to others. We are affirming and edifying lessons for ourselves. So yeah, I would say, have them come as a guest, and they could be your guest, Jessica, and kind of give it a try, give it a shot. They don't have to do anything the first time. They could be a fly on the wall and just observe. We may peer pressure them into at least introducing themselves, just between me and you. But if they truly don't want to say anything, we're not going to push them to do anything. Second time they come on, though, it's second time you come to the pool, you got to jump in.
Yeah.
And we're there to make sure they don't drown, and they'll have fun with it. And then by the second, by that second, third time of recording, they're going to start realizing they're among friends. They're going to recognize people, and everything kind of falls into place from there on in. And they'll start publishing. And our members are building a video library. So it's not only that they're posting that one video one time, but they're able to post the same video multiple times and really get repeated use, which is kind of another trick to social media of kind of reposting the same content over and over again that a lot of us know is kind of the trick to social media from posting standpoint. And we just make that easy because these platforms don't make it easy when you're posting video to repost it, and we do. So they'll get to that point, but practice and come in a fun, safe environment, and at the very least, promote yourself to a couple of people.
Yeah, I love that you're doing it with the comfort of other people, because I know some of the complaint that I hear from people that are getting into doing, like, for example, Facebook Live videos, they're talking and like if no one shows up and they're they're not interacting or what have you, and they feel like I'm just talking to no one, like what's the point of me doing this? So I love that you're doing it in this interactive environment as well, because it reminds them that there are other people out there on the other side of the computer. Just because they're not live with you in that moment doesn't mean Well, tell us, Vic, what are you up to next? What are you going to continue to grow this platform, or do you have something else going on? What's going on in your world?
I think for the time being, right now, April 2020, where we are doing about 2 or 3 of these video blogging clubs every day, every week, and each, we have one happening right now as I speak. In the background, they're always sharing, images, photos of kind of who's there, etc. So good crowd there. So we'll continue to do this, and I foresee we're doing a lot of co-hosted clubs. So we have a few business coaches and sales trainers and speaking coaches that want to bring their community, their client circle on the Video Socials platform, but in their own club, which is exciting because we get to provide the technology infrastructure and the grunt work of running the meeting, of starting and stopping the recording and all that stuff, while they can be a member co-host and MC. So they can just come and really be who they are and really provide extra value to their members. So those co-hosted clubs I'm expecting to flourish. I'm looking forward to clubs in other languages, in other countries. So I'm looking forward to really expanding the community side of it. And then there's the Brander, there's our automation platform that there's version 2.0 that should definitely be up by the time this is out, because I'm being promised any week now. And there are a lot of automations there, click to automate the captioning of your videos, because all these platforms, they play videos automatically, but they play on mute. And so vast majority of people watch videos on mute. And so you need some text on the video to get people to unmute you. So at the very least, we have a headline, a title, so people know what you're talking about, but preferably verbatim, word for word, what you say, because people do watch it on mute, so that we're automating. And once we have that, well, we're able to automatically put it into YouTube description. That's built-in search engine optimization for our members. So all that kind of bells and whistles. And there may be even more like a WordPress plugin and, you know, the actual downloadable app where people can ping each other. And I don't know if by the time fall of 2020, when people are watching this, but eventually there'll become, you know, on-demand aspects where you could just kind of ping and kind of create an instant club and kind of create an instant video socials of kind of the 10 people that are available, let's say in 10 minutes or whatever that parameter is, so people have time to get ready. And I'm looking forward to that, as we basically have a club every hour, more or less. And so, yeah, we're going to grow this. And thank you, Jessica, for helping turn this into a global phenomenon.
Absolutely. I think it's really exciting what you're doing. And I, like I said, I've had people on all of this season and all of the other seasons as well. But so much of the vibe this season has been with people who are really just trying to change the world in a way that is in alignment with them, in a way that feels really good to them. And while, like I said, so many people that come on are really in a different space, that they work in a very different space. I love that the things that you've shared are the same passions and the same things, that no matter what line of work you're in. So thank you so much for sharing about
that. Yeah, I think there's definitely a spiritual alignment. Our members truly have a caring for one another on a level that becomes beyond the professional connection. I mean, the beginning is kind of like an awkward junior high school dance, and you know, no one knows what they're doing with each other, you know. So you know, it's a little ragtag, and we're opening up a lot of new clubs. So I see that, and so I'm like, yeah, I get it. But then I see something like our Thursdays 11 a.m. that just happened, or for Friday 11 a.m. Both of them are like, you know, the members have been doing this with each other for like months, you know, over a year now. So there's just this friendship that extends, again, beyond just business, where that's really where we want to get people to know, like, and trust each other. And then it goes beyond that. They're video blogging together is kind of, all right, that's what we're doing right now, but they could really just as easily be doing anything else, be in a cooking class, or they could be jogging together. It doesn't really matter what the exact endeavor is. Here, it happens to be that you also get a marketing piece out of it, but you also get to have fun with friends.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Vic. If you guys want to learn more about Vikram Rajan and his videosocials.net, be sure to visit all of the links in the show notes, and we'll be back in just a minute for more of The Breakthrough Show. Hey, Jessica Dugas here, creator, producer, and host of The Breakthrough Show. We have big goals here at the show in the desire to change the world one Breakthrough Show episode at a time. And honestly, we couldn't do it without you. We want to take this moment to give a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters for helping us to not only expand the show, but spread its message far and wide. If you're not a supporter yet, we would love to have you. You can choose any tier with tons of benefits at patreon.com/The Breakthrough Show. We can't wait to have you part of our Breakthrough Show family. And now back to the show. Welcome back to The Breakthrough Show. Special thank you to Vikram Rajan for joining us today. He was amazing. Be sure you guys check out the show notes to connect with Vic. And of course, go have your time on videosocials.net on him, and have a good time with that. We are back with my special guest, Sejal Thakkar. Sejal, thank you so much again for being here today. It has been so good having this conversation with you.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well, I know that everybody is going to have so many notes to take from today's show. Like, you have to have a whole notebook for today's show. I know that a lot of people, we talk a lot about the race things in the beginning of the show today. How can people start to have that conversation? Because I think that this is part of the big issue today, is that so many of us are afraid to ask the questions, and we're afraid to say things. And then some people are like, well, that's not our responsibility to teach you. So then we're like, oh, now I don't want to ask at all. And so how do we start to have these conversations? What suggestions do you have for us?
You know, I think, look, we all need to do our work. And that's really the part is, understanding what your own blind spots might be, right? That's the first place to start, is to do the work, to learn about your own unconscious or conscious biases, right? So there are tools that can help you. For example, the one I mentioned about asking somebody who will be brutally honest with you. Another tool that you can use is that implicit association test. If you just type that into Google, it's an online tool. It's free, where you can learn about what your own biases are. And it's broken out into different categories. And so, that's the thing you got to do, is you got to figure out what your blind spots are so that they don't interfere with your decision making or your relationships. Once you start to do that work, then you can feel more comfortable in, how do I interact with somebody, or how do I start having this conversation with somebody that is different than me? Or if somebody makes a comment to you or does something to you that maybe they're thinking it's funny to them in their culture, but it's rude to you, how do I address that? Because I think there's two different components, right? If it's coming from a place of unconscious bias, then it's going to result from a microaggression. So that person is not aware that what they're doing or saying is offensive to you. So how you approach that person is going to be very different than how you approach the person that is intentionally being racist towards you, right? So I think you need to figure out which one. But my sort of advice would be to, in either situation, is to let that person know in a professional, non-judgmental, sort of respectful way. I call it calling them in. Because we're all different, our boundaries are different. So calling them in to say, hey, regardless of whether you were joking or not, or whatever the situation is, that is crossing my boundaries. And I would really prefer that you not do that again, right? So I call that putting them on notice. Now, whether it was unintentional or unconscious or intentional, you've made it clear to them that this is violating my boundaries. Now, if most people are going to stop, because we're not going to work. Our mission isn't to make other people, most of us, most of us.
We can't speak for everyone.
Exactly, we can't. There are a few, right, no matter what we say. But for most of us, we're going to stop. And I think that's where we can resolve a lot of this stuff. But if that behavior continues, then you get somebody else in to help you either mediate that situation or resolve that situation. But there are definitely things that you can do and to have these conversations. And they're not easy, especially because of everything that's going on in the world right now. Everyone's on high, we have a lot on our plates. We're homeschooling, you know what I mean? We're juggling so many things that it's easy to kind of lose it or say something, especially when we're on the computer too. It's a lot easier to be rude or unprofessional on the computer because you can hide behind that screen versus doing it in person. So, but you know what I would say, be proactive. Don't just, I'm going to end with this because I cannot stress this enough. That behavior is going to continue until you put that person on notice. Those days of just kind of letting it go, or, I'm sure they didn't mean it, or it's not going to happen again. Wrong. It will happen, and it will continue to happen, and it'll fester until it blows up into a big deal. And now we're in court. Don't wait for that. Don't wait for that. Right when it happens, and again, if you do it in the right way, it's going to resolve that situation. Why put yourself in a situation where you're putting up with behavior that you shouldn't have to? At the end of the day, this is why I love what I do, is regardless of our races, regardless of our color, regardless of anything, when you strip everything away, the one thing that we all have in common is that we want to be treated with dignity and respect. That's what we all want. So don't be afraid to ask for that, right? You deserve it.
Yeah. I love that. I love it. Oh my God. And I love how you called it calling in, because I think most everybody that I know, me included, don't like the idea of being called out for something. And so I love how you called that calling in. It's like having a warm conversation instead of the wagging of the finger.
That's
like
right.
You did that, right?
That's exactly it. You don't want to have the wagging. That's not going to ever work, right? But it's letting people know what your boundaries are. I can't know. I've talked to you now a few times. We know each other. I can make an educated guess, but if I do something unknowingly, I need you to be able to tell me that in a way so that I know that you're doing it, so that you care about our relationship. That's the message you want to send, is like, I care about our relationship, and I just want you to know that makes me feel uncomfortable. It's not your intention. A lot of these times, by the way, it's not intentional. It really isn't. It's not coming from a place of malice. It's really a lack of awareness.
Yeah, I think keeping that in mind is so important. The last thing I want to ask you is about when we are being called in. When someone calls us in and says, girlfriend, you've been doing this and it's not okay. How do we keep from slipping into the space of, I am such a bad person?
That's right. And that's where it's very important, because if the person calls you in the right way and they're focused in on just the behavior, right? So let's say you say a joke, and in your culture it's funny, in my culture it's rude, right? Which is what happens a lot of times, right? And so when you're calling me in, right, my only response to that is to acknowledge that I engaged in that behavior, because that's what it's about. It's the behavior. It's not about me and you. It's about the behavior. And I have to accept it. I have to apologize for engaging in that behavior because it hurt your feelings or it harmed you in some way. And then I have to do what I need to do, is to hold myself accountable to not do it again. And that's the only response. It's not about defending yourself. It's not about justifying, because it's not about you. It's about how I perceived it, how that made me feel. And that's really the way we move forward.
That's it, people. Mic drop. That is the end. That is so good. So many good things, you guys, that I think that we can take home, and we can take to work, and we can take to our children, because gosh, we need to continue this into the next generation and stop this.
Agreed. Thank you so much, Jessica, for having me here and allowing me to share my perspective on your show. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we would love to have you back next season and have a whole episode with all Sejal goodness, and it'll be amazing. Thank you so much for being here, my friend. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, I want to give a huge thank you to our guests today. We had Sejal Thakkar, amazing. I hope you guys took tons of golden nuggets in there that you can take away. Also, big thank you to our other guest, Vikram Rajan. Be sure to take advantage of the author to go hang out on videosocials.net with them. Coming up next week on The Breakthrough Show, we're welcoming an accomplished author and entrepreneur, Dr. Adrienne McKeon, to share about turning your breakdowns into breakthroughs, and you'll hear about her book, Melting Ivory, which you're going to love to hear about. Plus, we're spending some time with the empathetic herbalist, Laura Guthrie, and making some delicious sugar scrub for your next evening of self-care. And we'll be sharing our thoughts on episode 1 of a brand new Netflix series called Unwell. You don't want to miss it. Until next week, guys, please take a moment to rate, subscribe, comment, and share where available. And until then, make every day a great day for a breakthrough. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Breakthrough. Please visit our website at www.thebreakthroughshow.com. And be sure to join our After the Breakthrough community powered by Patreon. We look forward to seeing you next week. Same time, same place for another inspiring episode.